Hello everyone. In this lecture we are going to discuss some topics related to pressure measuring devices. So we'll start with Bourdon tube gauge. Okay, so as you can see in this diagram, a basic Bourdon tube gauge is shown. Bourdon tube gauge is the most widely used pressure gauge. Due to its simplicity and rugged construction, it covers ranges from 0 to 15 PCIG and 0 to 1 lakh PCIG basically. Let us discuss the construction and working of the Bourdon tube gauge. So, a C-type Bourdon tube consists of a long, thin-walled cylinder of a non-circular cross-section, sealed at one end, made from materials such as phosphor, bronze, then steel, alloy steel, beryllium copper, and attached by a light line work to the mechanism which operates the pointer. Okay, so in this Bourdon tube gauge, the other end of the tube is fixed and is open for the application of the pressure which is to be measured. The tube is soldered or welded to a socket at the base through which the pressure connection is made, and as the fluid under pressure enters the Bourdon tube, it tries to change the section of the tube from oval to circular, and this tends to straighten out the tube. The resulting movement of the free end of the tube causes the pointer to move over the scale. The tip of the Bourdon tube is connected to a segmental lever through an adjustable length link, and the lever length also may be adjustable. Now this segmentable lever end on the segment side is provided with a rack which meshes to a suitable pinion mounted on a spindle. Okay. The segmental lever is suitably pivoted and the spindle holds the pointer as shown in this figure. And what happens is sometimes a hairspring is sometimes used to fasten the spindle to the frame of the instrument to provide the necessary tension for the proper meshing of the gearing teeth, thereby freeing the system from the backlash, right? So any error due to the friction in the spindle is known as lost motion, right? These Bourdon tubes are made up of a number of materials depending upon the fluid and the pressure for which they are being used, right? For example, phosphor, bronze, alloy steel, stainless steel, monel metal. These are the metals that are generally used for the manufacturing of Bourdon tubes, okay? And for adequate reliability, the material for Bourdon tube must have good elastic or spring characteristics, right? These tubes are generally made in three types, three shapes: C-type, helical and spiral. Okay, so this is all about Bourdon tube gauge. Now let us move to diaphragm pressure transducer. Diaphragm pressure transducer. Now these are the diaphragms are the widely used gauge pressure, and they are also used for draft measurements, particularly in very low ranges. Okay, like they can even detect a pressure differential in the range of 0 to 4 mm. Right, this diaphragm can be in the form of flat, corrugated or disc plates. That depends on the choice, right? The choice depends upon the strength and amount of deflection desired, right? In high precision instruments, diaphragms are generally used in pair and back to back to form an elastic capsule. Right, with suitable modification, the diaphragm elements can made to cause an electronic circuit, thus converting the pressure movements to electrical signals that can be further detected or indicated or recorded by a system. Right, the most general type of diaphragm is metallic diaphragm, which is being shown in this diagram. Right. So in metallic diaphragm, it consists of a thin flexible diaphragm made of materials such as brass or bronze. A pointer is attached to the diaphragm, okay, as shown in figure, and the force of pressure against the effective area of the diaphragm causes the deflection in the diaphragm. Now, in some cases, the deflection of diaphragm is opposed by the spring qualities of the diaphragm itself, and in other cases, it is used purposely to add a limit in the deflection of the diaphragm. right? So this type of gauge pressure is capable of working in any position, and it is portable and therefore well adapted for use or installation in moving objects such as aircraft, right? So this is all about diaphragm pressure transducers. Okay, so now let us move to another measuring device, that is Pirani gauge, right, or Pirani gauge, right? Both can be pronounced. So Pirani gauge mostly basically consists of two wire filaments, as you can see in this diagram. One filament serves as a reference and is sealed in an evacuated glass, while the other filament is kept in a container connected to the source of pressure. Okay, these two filaments are connected in a bridge circuit, as you can see in this diagram. They are connected in a bridge circuit. Okay, so now let us see the operating principle of this gauge, right? If the resistance of the two Pirani elements are equal, then no current flows through the ammeter. But if the resistance of one Pirani element changes, then current will flow through the ammeter. So in the ammeter, if you see any deflection in the current, right, that means that in one of the Pirani element resistance is changing. Okay, this current flow indicates there is a change in pressure of the gas being measured. Right, these Pirani gauges are used for the pressure range about 10⁻⁵ to 1 torr. Okay, so this is basically the gauge which depends upon the bridge electrical and on the electrical ammeter basically, right, which shows the current change, right, and this current change indicates the change in pressure of the gas which is to be measured, right? Because of the gases, different gas have different conductivity. Okay, so this gauge must be calibrated for the particular gas that is to be measured, right? So this is all about Pirani gauge. McLeod gauge. Okay, so this McLeod gauge is basically the measuring device that measures very low pressures, even up to 10⁻⁶ torr. Okay, and this gauge is named after the inventor Herbert McLeod, right? The invention of this gauge took place in the year of 1874, and the shape of this gauge is somewhat like mercury manometer, which is the most common instrument used for measuring pressure. Okay, so this McLeod gauge also have mercury in it for the pressure measurement, right? The changes in the mercury level may indicate pressure measurement, may be used for the pressure measurement. Okay, in today's world, this gauge is largely replaced by electronic vacuum gauges, right? And this McLeod gauge works on the principle of Boyle's law. And Boyle's law states that if the temperature and the amount of gas remains constant, then the pressure of the gas is inversely proportional to the volume occupying it. Okay, which is P1 V1 is equal to P2 V2. Right, now let us discuss some basic and important parts of this McLeod gauge. So the first and the most important part is mercury reservoir. This mercury reservoir is used to store mercury, which can be used for measurement of pressure in the McLeod gauge. Then the another important part of this gauge is piston. So piston is used to raise or lower the level of the mercury in the measuring capillary bulb, reference column and reference capillary. Then as you can see in this diagram, there is a reference column with reference capillary, which is the pressure which is to be measured is applied to this reference column from top, and this reference column is attached with reference capillary which has a scale, and the zero reading of this reference capillary is called zero reference point, right? Now there is also a bulb and measuring capillary, right? They are connected with the reference column. Okay, McLeod gauge is designed in such a way that there will be some space left in the measuring capillary, right, when the mercury will reach the zero reference point. Okay. Now this point where the measuring capillary and reference column meets is called the cutoff point. Okay, this point is very much important. It is called cutoff point because at this point the mercury level, the mercury level is raised above this point, then the entry of the applied pressure from the reference column to the measuring column and bulb will be cut off. Okay, then the last and the most important part of Maillard gauge is scale. So there is a common scale for measuring capillary and a reference capillary, right? Let us move forward to the working of this Maillard gauge. So what happens, this gauge works by taking a sample of gas, right, from the vacuum chamber and then compressing it by tilting and infilling with mercury. Okay, so as in this Maillard gauge, the pressure is calculated using Boyle's law. So we have to first apply pressure to a known volume of a gas. Okay, so the pressure that we want to measure, okay, or the initial pressure is applied to the top of the reference column, right? And then the mercury level is raised by pressing the piston down. So as the piston is pressed down, the mercury level in the mercury reservoir decreases and the mercury level in the measuring capillary increases. Right, the mercury level in the measuring capillary is brought just below the cutoff point, and at this point the applied pressure fills the bulb and the capillary. After the bulb and the capillary is filled, the piston is again operated and the mercury level in the gauge increases and reaches the cutoff point. Then when the mercury level reaches the cutoff point, a known volume of gas is trapped in the bulb and the measuring capillary. And when we were increasing the level of mercury to cutoff point, at that time we have noted the volume of the gas in the bulb and measuring capillary. This volume is called initial volume. Then after that the piston is again operated and the mercury level is further raised so that the trapped gas in the bulb and measuring capillary are compressed. The mercury level is increased to a point that it reaches the zero reference point. After the compression, the volume of the gas is again noted and this volume is known as final volume of the gas. This volume is read and directly by the scale, and then the difference in the height of the measuring capillary and the reference capillary denoted by H, right, it is a measure of volume and pressure of the trapped gas. After this we know that the final volume, final pressure, and we already know initial volume, and from this volume we will find initial pressure using Boyle's law. So according to Boyle's law we know that P1 V1 is equal to P2 V2. Then let us suppose the volume of the bulb from the cutoff point to the beginning of the measuring capillary is V. Area of measuring capillary is small a. Measuring capillary height is HC. Initial volume of the gas which is trapped in bulb and measuring capillary is V1, which is equal to V plus AHC. Initial or applied pressure of the gas is P1, which is unknown, which is to be measured. And when the mercury reaches the zero reference point in the reference capillary, final volume V2 is equal to AH. This final pressure P2 will be P1 plus H. Now substituting all these values into the Boyle's law, P1 V1 is equal to P2 V2, will get P1 V1 is equal to P1 plus H into AH, which will give P1 AH plus AH square. Right, so we can write P1 V1 minus P1 AH is equal to AH square. Then P1 into bracket V1 minus AH is equal to AH square. So P1 is equal to AH square upon V1 minus AH. Since A is the cross section of the area of cross section of the measuring capillary, and which is very small, and H, which is the difference between the measuring capillary and reference capillary, which is also very small. So the product AH will be very small and this can be neglected. So then we will be left with only the first term, that is P1 is equal to AH square upon V1. So in this way the initial pressure or the unknown pressure can be determined using Maillard gauge. So this is all about this session. Thank you.